everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Captured effortlessly, that's the way it was. Happened so naturally.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey. And for those of you that don't know about us, Alzheimer Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We truly are true talk radio. We want to hear the real voices, and we want to raise those voices all around the world, from big to small, from people living with dementia or an MCI diagnosis to families and researchers, to support services and education, to advocacy and entertainment. All voices are welcome here, and we just have one rule, and that is that we have a respectful conversation. So again, I'm thrilled that you joined us today. Our goal here is to shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort around the world. And that comes from a base because my mom lived with dementia for 30 years, which means I lived as a care partner with dementia for 30 years. And I just found it so important to connect people to services, products, and tools that they deserve. And I have to thank all of our listeners around the world. You see, your likes, your clicks, and shares, they make a huge difference. We are spreading the news and giving hope and giving people a sense of community about dementia, a place they can go that feels safe to them. And so again, thank you so much for being part of our community and expanding that base. Now, I always have people asking me, where am I going to be? And so I'm just going to highlight that quick. March 11th and 12th, I am out in New Jersey in Eatontown with Artist Senior Living. March 16th, I will be back in Minnesota with the waters of White Bear Lake. And then the end of March, March 31st or April 1st, I will be in Pennsylvania with Artist Senior Living of Yardley, and then come back to Minnesota. I'll be down in Winona, Minnesota on April 2nd doing a screening. And you can find information out about all of those venues and events at alzheimerspeaks.com. Now, I'm going to give a shout out to just a couple of organizations before I introduce our guest here today, because we're going to have a special conversation about Project Lifesaver, and not everybody knows about Project Lifesaver. So we're here to lift the voice and help people be connected in case they ever need rescue mission. And these guys have done a phenomenal job. So I'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to always give a shout out to the Memory Cafe Directory. They are a wonderful group who is tracking where they're all located in the U.S., which there's over 900 of them now. And they're starting to develop directories for other countries as well. So just go to memorycafedirectory.com. You can find out if there's one by you. If there's not, maybe you want to start one up, or maybe you have one and you want to get it listed. It's free to be listed in the Memory Cafe directory. So go check that out. I also want to give a shout out to Keith Gallus, who is the author of a book called Parental Dementia. I love that name. And he has been an executive director for over 20 years, helping families through all the difficult questions that pop up when dementia hits a family. So he wrote this book, Parental Dementia, a guide through all the difficult questions. And you can get that on Amazon, at Walmart, Barnes & Noble. It's also an ebook now. Or you can just go to his site, parentaldementia.com, and put in the code Lori, L-O-R-I, and you'll save $5.99. I know which website I'd be going to. I'd be saving the $5 there. So with no further ado, let's talk about Project Lifesaver. And the only person that I could think to even pull in to talk about this, of course, is Chief Gene Saunders, and he started Project Lifesaver 21 years ago as a result of an unsuccessful search and rescue mission. And he has, cut the time down and just been able to narrow the search through Project Lifesaver. And for those of you that don't know, Project Lifesaver is a 501c3, which means it's a nonprofit organization. They work side by side with the safety agencies to help locate those who are prone to wandering when that occurs. And sometimes we don't know when someone would wander. We don't know if it's going to happen. And so to be able to have this protection mode set up and ready is really something else. So I think you're going to find our conversation fascinating. Chief Saunders, I'm so excited to have you on the show here today. And I always like to ask each one of my guests if they've been personally touched by dementia or Alzheimer's before we kind of get into our line of questioning. Have you had anyone in your own sphere of family or friends?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. When I first started the program, no. However, as time has evolved, my mother-in-law has developed Parkinson's. And as you know, dementia is part of Parkinson's. And now she is in pretty, I would say, fully developed dementia. Now, my father-in-law had vascular dementia, but as far as anyone in my immediate family other than them, no, I was not affected that way. My being affected came through my police work, dealing with people. My first was dealing with people that wandered.
So in terms of, we're going to talk about Project Lifesaver, which is perfect segue in. Why don't you talk about what got you to formulate Project Lifesaver and develop the equipment?
Well, as I said earlier, when I was in the police department, one of the commands I held was special operations, which was search and rescue and SWAT and those other things you hear about. And one of the things that started happening in the early 90s, we were starting to incur more and more searches for Alzheimer's patients that had wandered. Well, during that time, very few people knew much about searching for Alzheimer's patients, so it was just concluded that it was a normal search for a person that has become lost, and we followed the same procedures. Well, nobody knew that those procedures did not work well. So as a result, we were not finding the people in a what I would call successful manner, and in some instances, we didn't find them at all. They were recovered months later, and sometimes within our search area, which for some people it became hard to accept. How did you search this area and didn't find them? Well, there's a lot of reasons, which I'm not going to go into now, but it did bother me. And it took a lot of time and a lot of manpower to do these searches. They would go sometimes for weeks, involving hundreds of people, a lot of logistics, equipment. Well, one, for instance, we searched for the gentleman for 2 weeks, and I think we used every piece of equipment imaginable, from helicopters to SUVs to ATVs, you name it. Well, when we finally located the gentleman, 79-year-old Alzheimer's patient, unfortunately he was deceased, it appeared that he was in a direct line going to his last place of employment. However, he did not make it, and that's where we located him. Well, these things really started to bother me, not only for the fact that we were unsuccessful, but the time it was taking, the manpower that was involved, and just all those things combined just bothered me in the sense that we should be able to do this better. Well, I happened to get a brochure on wildlife tracking. And I started reading it, and it talked about how they tracked migration patterns and individual animals and for their habits and so forth. And the thought just occurred to me, well, if we can do this with animals, is there any reason we can't identify somebody that may wander due to Alzheimer's, give them a radio transmitter in some way, and that way we just tune into it, follow the signal, pick them up and bring them back home. Kind of took that and went to a manufacturer, and they said, yeah, we can do that. So then it was a great theory, but, unfortunately, theories don't survive much without money. So I started scouring our local area for grants. And fortunately, a local hospital, Chesapeake General Hospital, their foundation was willing to give me a startup amount for a pilot program. So we went back to the manufacturer. We got some equipment, wristbands, and because really hadn't been done before, we developed our own training procedures and so forth and so on. And that's how it all started. It was started just for the city of Chesapeake. At that point, I was not thinking about anything outside of Chesapeake. Well, since then, it's taken a life of its own. But that's how it all started. So,
Wow. And I find it interesting that, you get something has nothing to do, with people, wildlife, and go, well, this could work, how the mind just kind of expands things and puts things together. And then you didn't let it go there. You reached out, and then, you found, okay, it can happen. And then you reached out again, looking for those grant funds. And then, it's kind of amazing how this has all come about. When did you launch your first search? And do you remember your first search with Project
absolutely. You never forget your first search. Our program started April 9th, 1999. That was the very first transmitter that was placed. About the second or third transmitter was placed in the Greenbrier section of Chesapeake on a dementia patient. Well, up to then, we had done a lot of training and practicing, but that's not where the rubber meets the road. The rubber meets the road when you're actually out there and it's a real world event. So about the third month into our program, we had placed 10 or 15 transmitters. On a Saturday night, got a call when the dementia patients had broken out the front window of his house and was out. Well, this same dementia patient, prior to being placed in our program, had gotten out, and it took us about 9 hours and over 80 personnel to search for him, and we actually didn't find him. A railroad engineer happened to see him along a railroad right-of-way in some bushes and called us. So anyway, here he goes again. Well, the heart's pounding. You've got a tremendous anxiety level because, okay, the whole program is going to rise or fall right here. If we don't find this fella, we're a total failure and everything has been for nothing. As we rolled into the neighborhood, I turned on the receiver and tuned in his frequency, and I describe it as the most reassuring sound I ever heard. Because when we hear it, it's a chirp. When we hear that transmitter, well, we heard the chirp. So my next reaction was, I got you. So we rolled up to a stop. I jumped out. I had the receiver. I tracked him over about 100 yards into an apartment complex. He had gone into an apartment hallway, into a storage closet, pulled the door behind him and locked it. So we recovered him from the time we got there till I got to him, a little over a minute, maybe a minute and a half. Because I was on a dead run. I had a good signal. I was on a dead run.
Oh my gosh.
And, we started talking about it. How long do you think it would have taken to find this gentleman if we did not have this? Well, I hate to think, we may have been in the situation where, because of where he was at, we may have never found him. Hopefully we would have, but with the program, a minute and a half and we had him.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, I'm sure that you don't find everybody that quickly. Is there an average time?
About 30 minutes,
Oh, see
time
that?
on scene.
Wow, that still is incredible.
I think so. With the searches that I've had, it lasted hours, days, weeks. 30 minutes is really a tremendously quick time.
Wow. Well, I think about, the man by the railroad tracks and just thinking, oh my gosh, if he goes down there again, I mean, anything could happen. You know, your mind, and I'm not even, attached to the situation, and my mind goes all over the place. I can't imagine what that does to a family, and then all of you out there searching, feeling that pressure, to save a life.
Well, probably one of the saddest things in the world to see or gut wrenching is a family who's had somebody wander because now they have no control of the outcome. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to reach them. So they are, I describe it when I teach police officers, the three things that we fear the most, I think, are death, taxes, and loss of control. Well, when you lose control of your loved one who has dementia and know absolutely or can control nothing about what happens to them, that's a pretty gut wrenching situation, and you see it in the family. So being able to do something to help them, it gives you a tremendous feeling. I tell them after my first couple of rescues, you couldn't have got me out of this program with dynamite.
I bet. It's got to be just exhilarating. I can't imagine the adrenaline rush. I remember one of our memory cafe people, husband had dementia. He had given up driving, I don't know, 5-8 years ago. And she never thought twice about having her keys laid out. Well, he ended up getting up in the middle of the night once, and she caught him dressed, ready to go, got him back in bed, and then she went back to sleep. And this time really fell asleep hard. She was so tired. He grabbed the keys and he left, and he drove. And that had never even occurred to her that he would take the car. And then he was gone, I want to say 8-9 hours before they found him, miles and miles away, even ran out of gas, and the construction workers helped him get back on the road and got lost, and a police officer redirected him because nobody knew that he had dementia. And it's just, they were just like, and they got him safe and got him back home and stuff. But I just remember her explaining, and my mom lived with dementia for 30 years. I can't imagine how overwhelming that would be, how scary that would be. Like you said, to be out of control, to not have any idea of what's going to happen. Are they going to be found or not? Do you have like one of your fondest memories in, you've been doing this, gosh, over 20 years now. You must have one or two that just really stick out in your mind.
Well, one of the fondest memories I have is that back when I was doing it, and is going to the houses to change the batteries, and how these particular situations turned into me gaining over 15 pounds because it turned into a social gathering. And what occurred to me there was a lot of these people are really isolated because of this. So like I was, company coming in, and I would, they'd have cake and ice cream and cookies. So that was a pretty fond memory because I always knew I was going to get something good when I went to change some of these batteries. But I guess, some of the others just, and there's so many of them, it's hard to really zone in on one, is just being able to locate these people and the feeling of satisfaction when you've got them and you take them back home, and the reception of the families. That kind of tells it all and gives you that that reinforcement and gives you the memories that, hey, I did something good. I did something good for somebody. And, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes right down to it. And people are so appreciative too, for you helping, keeping their systems going and caring enough to provide it and all of those things. And, dementia is a arena where I don't know, people's hearts are just on the line, and they're just so appreciative, when you're there to help them. And it's almost hard not to make friends in this industry. One of the things I want to talk about is, what makes Project Lifesaver different from some of the other systems that are out there? What makes it stand out?
Well, I guess I'd like to start that one off by saying Project Lifesaver was the very first. We were the pioneers. And I think a lot of these other companies, and I go back to one of the things that makes us different is we are a nonprofit. We are a 501c3. We're the only ones. I was asked many times, why don't you make this a for-profit organization? My answer is because I don't feel like that we're giving the service that we should be if we're in it for profit. And the other is that we are a program. It is not just a device, and it incorporates first responders, not only as the searchers, but training them to be able to interact with the people that they're going to be dealing with, such as Alzheimer's, dementia, even autism, Down syndrome, all of these people. And when I first started the program, it was solely aimed at Alzheimer's and dementia. And then I started finding out all these other conditions that had dementia. And then all of a sudden, here comes autism, Down syndrome, all these things that have the same type of characteristics in some ways, such as wandering or eloping. And I think we are constantly looking to improve our equipment, to improve our training, so that all of our first responders that are trained to do this know more and more about what they're dealing with and how to deal with it. How do you talk to these people? Once you locate them, that's only half the job. Now you got to get them in the car and get them home. Sometimes that's easy. Sometimes it's not. So how do you accomplish that? How do you deal with them? And I think that sets us apart from a lot of these other things. And I think the last thing that I'd like to say on that is the technology we use is reliable and it works. You don't have to worry about, have I recharged this thing? Is it somewhere where it's not going to work or get a signal? So I think that's where, Project Lifesaver has kind of stood out with its dependability and reliability. And, I like to brag, our members have proved that over 3,600 times by bringing people home. And we're proud to say that. So, yeah, I think Project Lifesaver differs in many, many ways from anything else out there.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned the training that is done with this. Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, aside from training them on how to use the equipment, how to troubleshoot the equipment, all these things around the equipment, we train them on what is Alzheimer's. What causes Alzheimer's? Now, we don't get deep into the medical aspects of it, but we want to give the officers an understanding. What is dementia? You hear these terms interchangeably, as you know, Alzheimer's, dementia, and a lot of people don't understand that Alzheimer's is really under the dementia umbrella. So we explain the difference in that, and we try to show them and illustrate by using a life timeline about how memory goes with Alzheimer's or dementia, and why is it somebody sees their daughter and doesn't recognize them, or sees a grandchild and thinks it's their daughter, or sees somebody else and thinks it's another person. Why is that? What happens to cause that? And how do you deal with them when you are talking to them? Such things as validation, I've heard it called. For instance, I had a gentleman that I tracked him out on the interstate. Well, he was going home to his parents. Well, of course, his parents had been deceased for many, many years. Well, the way I finally got him to go back to where he was staying was by suggesting that I was hungry and he should be too. And let's go back and get a sandwich. So finally got him to go back. So it's how do you get and connect with them? What do you say? How do you act? Plus safety. How do you perform around these people and be safe? Because in some instances, as you know, these people can act out in ways that are totally unexpected. An act of aggression or whatever. Well, how do you protect yourself? And those kind of things, because I think it's important that the officers that are out there searching, they need to understand it. You're now coming into another world. You're dealing with another world. You might as well understand that. You need to try to understand where this person's coming from and put yourself there so that now you can talk to them on the level that they're talking. Are they talking 20 years in the past? Then you need to be able to talk 20 years in the past and understand what they're saying so that you can get, them to work with you. So that's a big part of the training.
So when somebody sets up to get on the system, is there like an information sheet or something that they fill out that they can give the police if their loved one would wander, that can maybe say dates and times and names that might trigger a conversation with them and make them feel comfortable?
Absolutely. In fact, in most instances, the police or first responders will go to the residence or wherever the loved one is and meet with the caregivers and the loved one, and they will do what we call a profile. And that's a number of sheets, including a picture, but it has all of that type of information, like what medicines did they take? What did they do in their past? Were they in the military? Were they Boy Scouts? Have they ever wandered before? If so, where did they go and what times of the day? Because sometimes that will tell you a lot. And then they can come back and we provide a free password protected database where these officers can put all of that information. So let's say John Doe wanders, they can go into their computer, pull up all that information and know everything about John Doe, including the frequency of his transmitter. So when they start tracking him and locate him, okay, now I can talk to him because I know something about him. But the biggest takeaway is if I am the one that's going to your house and changing that battery, what is happening between me and you? We are developing a rapport. I get to know you. I get to know your caregivers. So I know a little bit more about you on a personal level so that if I do have to go look for you, I have a better understanding on how to deal with you and what's going on.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I can see how that can be reassuring for the caregiver and the person with dementia, depending on how far along they are in the progression. And I love the idea of getting the profile and having that information. I know here in Minnesota, and I'm not sure if it's done all over, I've been told it is, but I don't know for sure, that people who have somebody living with dementia can call into 911 non-emergency and let them know that somebody in the house has dementia, and a few little details in case they get called to the house. Is that something that you share with a 911 source, or is that, it sounds like it's pretty confidential and held to the program?
Well, the agency itself can share any of that information they want to. As far as the the database or the PLI portal, we call it, that is confidential only to the agency itself and the personnel that are cleared, because we still have to comply with HIPAA. So, but if I am an officer and I have to search for you, I can share that information with the entire agency or any agencies that may be assisting me. And that's in part of the agreement that we have with the caregiver, that we can share that information in the case of a search.
So when somebody signs up for this, is it always through a police department that they're connected with, who's doing the searches?
Mostly it's police, fire, sheriff's department, search and rescue, because let's face it, they're the ones that are going to have to search. They're going to be the first ones out there. Now, we do have some that are assisted living homes where they sign up through the assisted living home. Some sign up directly with us. However, it has to be cleared with the agency that within which jurisdiction they live. So if you're in, Podunk somewhere and you call in, then we're going to call that agency that's doing the program and say, okay, so-and-so wants to become part of the program. Do you have a problem with that, or would you like to check on it further and get back with us? Because we still would like to send that transmitter to the agency to place it. Because there we go. It gives them an understanding of the person, the caregiver, and the lay of the land around the residence or where they're staying.
Which makes sense. Now, do you ever find where someone's not wearing their transmitter, and what does that look like, for people? Because that's one of the things I hear from people is like, oh, they won't carry this with, or they won't wear this. How does your system work?
This is a common thing with caregivers. They make assumptions. And many times the assumptions are incorrect. We do have situations where many times we'll put, the wristband on somebody and they'll cut it off. It has to be cut off. We'll go back, we call that a training exercise. We'll go back and locate it, put it back on. And it almost becomes a situation of getting them used to it. Once they're used to it, it becomes part of them. Or we'll move it. We'll move it down to the ankle. A lot of men prefer it on the ankle. And I guess, they talk about women being vain. I'm not so sure, But the men like it on the ankle better. But on the ankle, it's out of sight, out of mind. But one thing about it, let's say they get it off. That gives us a good starting point of where were they at some point if we have to initiate a search. So we haven't had that situation more than 3 or 4 times in all the time I can remember, where somebody has gotten out and gotten the wristband off, but they were found because we knew where they were at some point, maybe 20 minutes ago. So that gives us a good starting point to fan out on.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And it makes sense too that people have to get used to it, when something is new and uncomfortable and things, and they don't understand what it's for necessarily. I can see that happen.
Now we have them in colors too. They seem to like that. We'll give them a color they like.
Okay, well, that's good. Choice is always good. What can we expect to see in 2020 with Project Lifesaver?
I think you're going to see where we are developing new systems to do what we do. Some that are maybe more accurate and reliable. Of course, I don't know how much more accurate and reliable you can get, but it'll be easier to use with a little different technology in there that may help us in being able to do our job even quicker. And even encompassing some other technologies and coupling them with what we do, so that if that technology doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and we know it may not, we've still got a fallback technology that we've used for years and years that we know will work. So couple them together, maybe together they'll work even better. So these are the kind of things we're looking at, and we constantly stay in touch with experts in this situation to make sure our training is up to date. What is the latest trend? What is the latest method for dealing with people? And then things like that are going to make the program more efficient and easier to use.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now, my understanding is you have a big conference coming up in August, I believe. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that, and when and where is it, and who should come? All that.
Everybody should come. It's not just open to Project Lifesaver members. It is open to anyone that has an interest in what we do and in dementia and autism and all of these conditions. Last year we celebrated our 20th year, and we thought that was a great conference. Well, this year, Joe Selinentry and Justine Rubin, who were kind of head up our conference, I think they've outdone themselves because we've got some great people coming in. A friend of yours and mine, Mara Botanis, suggested somebody who we actually booked and will be coming in, and that's Kim Campbell, Glenn Campbell's wife, and she'll be talking about caregiving for an Alzheimer's patient, and she'll have her book there where you can purchase it and get it signed. We're going to be going into the subject of dementia among Native Americans and the wandering problem, because we found that it hasn't really been delved into very deeply. So we're going to have a panel that's going to talk about that. We're bringing in a fellow by the name of David Finch, who is an author and the head writer for the TV show Atypical. We're also going to have Dr. Julian Maha and the actor Noah Wiley are going to be there, and they're going to be talking about sensory inclusive training on how do you deal with these people even more, and what kind of things do you need to be looking for, which I think would be a great boon to all of our officers and so forth. We also, in the last 2 days, is a training module we do. Something we tried last year and it went over extremely well, and I know you've heard of it, called the Alzheimer's Experience, where we put people into an Alzheimer's situation with the gloves and the goggles and so forth. And now you see and understand even better what dementia and Alzheimer's patients are dealing with, so that you can deal with them better. It's always, if you walk a mile in their shoes, you understand it a lot better. And that has gone over real well. So we will have that. We're also going to have another person that you know well, Karen Francis. She'll be sitting on a panel where Gary Barg from the Fearless Caregiver will be conducting a panel on caregiving, talking to caregivers about what has been their experiences. And one of the things we found with law enforcement officers is that these things go over very well because law enforcement officers have this psyche of, if you're going to talk about it, what do you really know about it? Have you been there? Have you done that? And it goes back to a popular movie I saw years ago called Full Metal Jacket. Of course, that was a war movie, but there was a statement made in there, and there was two Marines talking. And one of them was a journalist, and he was talking all about his experiences. And here was this gruff veteran who definitely had experiences. And the veteran looked at him and he says, "You talk the talk. Can you walk the walk? Have you been there? Do you know what you're talking about? Or are you just talking off the top of your head?" Now, all these people we're bringing in, they've walked the walk. And police officers resonate with that, because now here's somebody that's talking from their experience, not from something they read. And it goes over very well. And I'm really looking forward to the conference, and I invite everybody to come. They can go on our website, projectlifesaver.org, and register. And it's being held at the Orlando Buena Vista Hilton Palace in Orlando, which is right across the street from Disney Springs. So not only can you come to the conference and have a good time, but when the off hours, you got plenty of places to go through Disney World and Disney Springs. So we're really looking forward to it, and I would like to see even more people come, because I think they're going to get something from it.
Well, that sounds exciting, and you've got some great names. Kim Campbell just does a fantastic job. She's just a joy, and Gary Berg during the panel, with Karen Francis and some others, going through, I don't know which type of Alzheimer's experience, if it's, Dementia Live, or there's a few different ones that are out there. I went through that 3 times. And even though I went through it the 3rd time, I knew exactly what to expect. It still disoriented me. And I left my purse there, went up to my hotel room at the conference, and it was an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And I thought, oh my gosh, I left without my purse. I mean, that's how disoriented I was from it. Yeah. But it is, and again, I'm a professional in the industry. I knew what to expect, but it's still can kind of shake, rattle, and roll your brain in what to expect. And
I forgot to mention one fellow that's going to be there. I don't know if you remember the old show Barney Miller. Well, yeah, Wojo will be there. Max Gale. He was inducted as an ambassador last year. And the interesting thing about Max Gale is that on the show General Hospital, he plays a person with Alzheimer's. So he even said when he came last year that the experience at our conference gave him tremendous insight into the character he was playing. Because he was able to talk to professionals like you and persons that caregivers. And I think those kind of things are invaluable.
Oh, I agree. And that's why I do what I do with Alzheimer's Speaks. I think it takes everybody's voice to bring this to the forefront. And I think we kind of get trapped when we think we have it figured out because it's, every person is different with dementia. Every care partner is different. Every environment is different. And it's a moving diagnosis. And so somebody can have a moment of clarity and the next moment be wandering. There isn't a book to follow on this thing. And so we have to, I think, be really open-minded and gather as much knowledge from as many resources that are in the trenches. They teach us so much, both the people living with the disease and the care partners, as well as the professionals. So, well, anything that we haven't covered that we should cover? Oh, I know one thing. Some people will probably ask about signing up, for the program. Is there a cost or a range, or does that vary depending on how it's funded?
It varies depending on how it's funded with the agencies. We have some agencies that are able to offer it at no cost. We ask that all agencies offer it at minimal cost. So the way, if they want to sign up or get more information, go to our website, click on the tab, Where Are We? Go put in your zip code, and it'll tell you where the closest Project Lifesaver agency is. And we've got 1,600 of them throughout Canada and the United States. And then call them. Or you can call us and we'll give you the contact information if it's not available. Talk to them and see what you can do to sign up your loved one. But it may be a cost, may not be. It depends on the agency. I know most agencies try to give it at the very most minimal cost they can. And if possible, they give it for nothing, which that's what we like to see. So it just depends on the agency.
Yeah, this is a fabulous thing for cities and stuff to get behind. We all have aging populations. Every 3 seconds, somebody around the world is developing dementia. This isn't something that's going away, and we need to make sure that people are safe and protected in our communities and can live thoroughly. So again, you can go to projectlifesaver.org and then go to the Where Are We button and then put in your zip code to see who's closest to you as an agency that would responding if there was a situation and helping you get set up. You also have a phone number people can call, which is 772-446-1273. That's 772-446-1273. Well, Chief Saunders, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really eye-opening, and I appreciate you sharing kind of the history and all you've been through with this. And Why don't you quote that number again of how many lives have been saved?
Over 3,600.
Wow, that's fabulous. That is absolutely fabulous, with a average time of, I think you said 30 minutes to be able to find someone. That's just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable, and wonderful work. So thank you for all you're doing, and keep us posted as things progress.
I will. And if I could just put one plug in real quick, an author out of Virginia Beach actually thought enough of our program to write a book, and it's called Deploying High. And you can go on our website and you can order it, or you can go to Amazon.com or to BarnesandNoble.com. And it talks about Project Lifesaver from beginning to where we are now. And I think it would be very informative for some people as to what this program has had to go through to be able to serve them.
Wonderful. Well, that would be an interesting book. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure some of our listeners will be picking that up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it much. Have a wonderful week. Bye now.
You too. Thank you for having me.
So in wrapping up, I just want to thank everyone for listening today. And I hope that you will push this episode out. Project Lifesaver is a absolutely fantastic opportunity for people to take advantage of this and protect their loved ones and protect your own sanity, because we as care partners, we worry about a lot of things. So again, you can call Project Lifesaver at 772-446-1273. That's 772-446-1273. Or you can go to their website, projectlifesaver.org. That's projectlifesaver.org. And then go to the Where Are We button and put in your zip code, and you will find an organization closest to you. In wrapping up, I also just want to point you back to alzheimersspeaks.com. That's our main website. There you will find information on our projects and initiatives. You'll find out about Dementia Chats, which is a video conversation that I facilitate with people who are diagnosed with dementia. We pick various topics which are really interesting. You will also find out information about dementia quick tips, which are tips I wish somebody would have given me when I stepped into this space with my mom. And of course, all of our episodes on Alzheimer's Speaks are archived. So you can find that by just clicking on the radio show and going to Blog Talk Radio. And then our video interviews, of course, are posted on our YouTube channel as well. So have a blessed week, everyone. We'll talk with you soon. Bye now.